Downloading. Program activated.
Minding your own business, sat down doing your business, and all of a sudden a bucket of water would come flying over the top of you.
Thank you for downloading the Fitbox Fizzy Call podcast. In this episode, my guest is Mr. Bob Hope. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I hail from Twickenham. I was the youngest of 5 siblings. We had no restrictions on us in those days, so we were able to go out and play on the old bomb sites and the wild lands and the parks and kind of make our own fun. And through making our own fun, we kind of started doing what you now call parkour, whereas we used to just look at objects and see if we could do tricks on them and jump over them and stuff like this. Yeah, it gave us a real active beginning to my whole career. If we was in Twickenham High Street and we saw buildings with scaffolding all around them, then that was really good because we'd be chinning up the scaffolding and trying ways to get down without using our legs or just one-armed or different things like that. Real kind of adventurous type of stuff, which then led me on to joining the Boy Scouts. And whilst in the Boy Scouts, obviously did a lot of outdoor stuff, very much into the kind of physical way of life that the Scouts lead. Lots of camping, lots of trips down into the country, into the woods, and kind of living outdoors. From then, I joined the Sea Cadets because I thought, again, it was another activity that I fancied doing. And I always wanted eventually to think about a service career if I didn't make it as a school teacher, which obviously I didn't make it, so I went into the Navy. But in the Sea Cadets, I was lucky again because they were a very active organisation and we did lots of rowing, lots of playing football, lots of boxing, bit of everything really. I got a load of great chums there who sadly you lose sight of them as you get older. But yeah, they were great. They were great fun, and we had good times then when you think back on it. And that gave me another taste of thinking, service life is quite good for me. But living in Twickenham, we had a very good college near us called St Mary's College. And St Mary's College was where all our PE teachers from school came from. And I went to a school called Teddington Secondary, which is in Broom Road, and it backed onto the river. It was a very progressive school at the time. It was a secondary modern. And I actually was in the 5th and 6th year. I decided to stay an extra year to see if I could get any qualifications. Didn't do me any good. I got more time to kind of play sport and do things like that. And in fact, whilst I was there, I got my first coaching qualification, which was as a trampoline coach, which was quite enjoyable. And in those days it was not like now where they go to trampoline clubs, because trampoline was in its infancy then, and to get that, it was something that we could use whilst in our weekly meetings at Sea Cadets or something like that.
What kind of age were you when you were in the Scouts, and then what age when you transitioned to the Sea Cadets?
Well, I was about 11 when I first joined the Scouts. My brother was one of the Scouts masters, and I suppose when I joined the Sea Cadets I was about 14, I suppose.
Was there a choice, or was it that the Sea Cadets were available locally and so it was by default you ended up there?
No, it was a choice. I done everything I could do in the Scouts. In fact, I was doing both at one time. I managed to become a Queen Scout, which was the highest award you could get within the Scout organisation. And I thought, well, I've done everything here. Let's move on to another challenge, something else, which was what the Sea Cadets gave me. Because I enjoyed the life at sea, I thought, well, the Sea Cadets would be good. Not only that, my brother-in-law at the time was an officer in the Sea Cadets, and he had a kind of, come on, you come and join us, leave the Scouts, come and join us, you'll have great fun, blah, 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 blah. So I decided to give it a try and thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, we used to meet twice a week. Sundays was church parade in the mornings. Midweek we used to have a parade, but then we used to go on other days when we used to we were fortunate we had a big hall. We used to do circuits in there. We used to make our own weights up using beer barrels and stuff like that, and we used to rig up assault courses just to try and get ourselves fit, because we saw it as a means of improving our fitness.
And that's from age of 14 that you're doing.
Yeah, there was, I mean, in those days, there were no gymnasiums. There were no, you had probably a couple of what we call now spit and sawdust gyms that were maybe in railway arches. You may have had a sports hall in a local leisure centre or council run leisure centre, which is nothing like it is now. You might have only had just a 13 station multi-gym in it, and that was it. So yeah, there was no recognised form of fitness. Now I'm going back to the 1960s. So, we're talking about 64, 65, 66 time, when what we know now as the fitness industry did not exist. The only way that you ended up getting fit was playing a sport. And there was lots of sports out there that people did, but there was no fitness to get fit for it. And if you wanted to do it, you had to devise different ways of doing it yourself, which we did.
Who identified that link then between the need for fitness to enhance your performance on the sports field?
Well, I mean, it wasn't so much that for me. It was more for me. It was, well, I need to pass a physical in order to get into the armed forces. So in order to get into the armed forces, you have to meet certain requirements.
Do you remember what they were?
Off the top of my head? No. Unfortunately, I don't. But it was, no, I can't even remember what it was. But there were, no, I can't.
Do you remember if you knew about, did you know what to expect, or was it
No.
we just need to get fit and hope for the best when we get there that we're going to...
Well, I think you did, because when you are a Sea Cadets, you are a mini me as far as the Royal Navy is concerned. Yeah, people say you're playing at sailors, which is what you are doing, but you're doing the same type of training, albeit as a adolescent rather than an adult. So you kind of got the feeling for it. For instance, we did go to the local swimming pool, and we did have to jump off of a diving board, no lower than 3 meters, tread water for a minute in full clothing, and then swim to the side and climb out. I do remember that. The other physical test we may have done was kind of the how many sit-ups can you do, how many press-ups could you do. That was it. It meant nothing. There was no... this is the way you should do it. You just bent your arms and straightened them, and that was it, kind of thing. And someone counted it and thought, oh yeah, you're doing all right.
What age were you, Bob, when you thought, right, I'm off to the Navy?
I actually was late. I didn't join until I was actually 19.
And were you in the Sea Cadets all of the time before, from 14
No,
to 19?
I left the Sea Cadets when I was about 17, I think.
Okay.
And it was about coming up to the last year at school, leaving school, and time to get a job. And obviously what you find in leisure changes. You go to the local discotheque or the local pub or something like that. You start changing what you're doing as you get older. And I had a time when my family weren't keen on me going into the forces, especially the Navy, because my mum had the attitude, well, we don't want you just being a drinker, because they had a reputation in those days of a lot of alcohol being drunk. I wasn't a drinker. I didn't drink when I was young. Still don't. Yeah, that's why I left it until I was 19.
Did you maintain that appetite, though? So between 17 and 19, that appetite for fitness and physicality, that was still a big part of...
Yeah, I did a lot of canoeing. My brother was a very good canoeist, and I joined a canoe club. One was in Twickenham, the Canoe Touring Club, and another one was the Royal Canoe Club in Teddington, and used to spend hours bashing up and down the river from Richmond to Kingston, going around doing regattas and things like that in a canoe, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But again, I have the kind of personality where I do something, I get okay at it, I know that I'm not going to be the best at it, so I go and find something else to do.
What's that about? Is that because you recognise that, right, I'm not going to win the gold medal here, I'll try something else, or is it just, right, I've conquered this, let's conquer something else?
I think that was what it was. Earlier than that, I was in the local Isleworth swimming baths, just kind of playing around, jumping off of diving boards and doing bombs and things like that, but kind of throwing a somersault in before that. And this lady came up to me one day and she said, what do you think you're doing? And I just said, well, I'm diving. And she said, no, you're not. She said, you're messing about. Would you like to learn how to do it properly? And I said, yeah, why not?
Wow.
But this woman, she was in the Olympics, and she actually came 5th in the Rome Olympics. I didn't know her from Adam.
Wow.
But from then I started to dive. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And because I did a lot of gymnastics at school, I found that I was reasonably good at it. But what I didn't like was when things went wrong, how it hurt. So consequently, again, I got to a level where I thought, if I'm going to go any further, I've got to have a different kind of mindset and a different brain to what I've got now. So, because I'm not going to make it. So again, that got parked. Gymnastics got parked. My trampolining got parked. And I just moved on to other things.
So at 19, you do join the Navy. Do you remember the process of applying, of traveling to wherever you had to?
Yeah, I had to go to High Holborn in London to have my initial interview. So, of course, it was best bib and tucker, suit, shirt and tie, find the recruiting office, go in there, introduce myself to them, sit down. And it was a Royal Marine that kind of did my interview, asked me what I wanted to be. And I said to him, well, I want to be a physical training instructor.
So you knew that from the beginning?
Oh, yeah, because I was a physical training instructor in the Sea Cadets. I did it there, although it wasn't anything like I did in the Navy. It was kind of, again, it was a mini-me version of it. And you got to organise the fitness and the sports and that within your own Sea Cadet unit. So I had an inkling about where I was going. And because I had great respect for my PE teachers at school. Most of them came from St Mary's. I used to think, yeah, that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. I want to do sport. Now, the interesting thing is the word sport. It had nothing to do with fitness.
Right.
I wanted to do sport. I wanted to play sport. I wanted to teach sport. I wanted to coach sport. That's where I saw my future being. And that was way, way back in my early teens. I can always say to you now that I always knew where I was going. I had my goal set out way, way back then, but I didn't know it was a goal.
How was that received when you answered that question and said, I want to be a physical training instructor?
Well, it was kind of, what makes you think you'd make it? Why do you want to do that? And do you know how you're going to get there? And I said, yes, I've got to join the Navy. I've got to spend time at sea. I've got to spend time as a rating. I've got to get to a certain level. I've got to apply. I've got to do an aptitude test. If I pass that and I'm lucky and I get released from a ship, I can go to start training. If I do the training and I'm successful, then I can do a job as a physical training instructor. So I knew what it was all about. And really going to the recruiting office was then to sit down and do my maths and English test. So they could see I could count and I could write my name and all this rubbish. Because I was older, I wasn't their normal interviewee. I was about 18 when I went to the interview. Whereas most people, they're only 16. They're just straight out of school. Bearing in mind, I'd done a couple of jobs beforehand. I'd done an apprenticeship, which I didn't like. And I actually asked to be released from my apprenticeship, which was in mechanical engineering, because I just didn't enjoy it. Yeah, the interview was a formality at the end of the day, because the person that was sat on the other side of the desk realised that I knew what I wanted to do and I had a good understanding of where I was going. And I didn't really need my parents' consent because of the age I was.
So you were quite attractive for them as a...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was easy for them, and I had to wait. I think from my interview, I think I had to wait 18 months before I actually joined. I joined on the 10th of November 1969.
Is there a long wait to find out? I mean, that's waiting to begin, but is there a long wait to find out that you've been accepted?
No, there wasn't. No, it was quite quick for me. I'm not sure how it is for other people, but yeah, it was quite quick. But it was just.
How does that affect your mindset then? Thinking, right, I've got 18 months and then I'm in. Do you double your efforts in regards to getting fit, or are you thinking I'm going to make the most of the pub? What's in your head?
I think you kind of make the most of your freedom, because you know what's coming. You know that there's going to be no freedom for many, many, many weeks. You know that you're going to be batted around from breakfast to dinner. Your life's not going to be your own for a period of time, and you've got to knuckle under. Things are slightly different now to what they was way back when, because all the health and safety and everything that's now come into the armed forces was there, but not as it is now. It wasn't as strict, and lots of things happened that I can still remember standing in the middle of the parade ground with my mattress above my head in the pouring rain, because someone had done something wrong. Wow. Oh, absolutely. It's the word beasting comes to mind, and people that say they get beasted, they ain't got the faintest idea unless they've been through the military. It's supposed to be character building, but somehow it's just a way of them kind of breaking you down and
and
building you
showing
up.
you what you can tolerate. That's
Absolutely.
what you're building. I mean, it is I've no experience of this, but it's got to be a highly stressed job and an environment, and you've got to be able to cope with that. There's got to be a degree of resilience that you need to build somehow. And if if standing in the rain with your mattress above your head helps to achieve that, then it helps to achieve that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's pathetic, really, when you think back on it. And there's other ways to do that, but it kind of, my dad and my mum say it's character building. It's all character building. And you think, well, yeah, I suppose it is. If you keep your nose clean and you get down and work hard, it doesn't affect you. You just think, why have you done that to someone else?
Yeah.
Because everyone takes the blame for, well, that's teamwork, isn't it? At the end of the day, if you're working in a team, you take the hit for everybody else. So,
Our actions do affect others, and
absolutely.
it's got to no, I see the rationale there in things that don't obviously make sense, because what you're learning is, you talk about character building. It's not just a physical character or mental resilience. There's also an element of responsibility, and
Absolutely.
how I need to be conscious that what I do will impact others. And in this instance, it could be standing in a parade ground in the rain, mattress overhead, but actually in a combat environment, it could be a life or death situation. And so that makes sense to me.
Oh, absolutely. And it's another way that they see of looking at potential leaders. They look at some people and say, well, you've got a little bit extra than the other people, or you're kind of a bit of a wimpy. So, okay, because you've not really got any trade as such. You're just a sailor, you're just a number, and you go through X amount of weeks training. I can't even remember now how many weeks I think it was about 6 weeks training before you even thought about going out the front door. And it's all about making sure you can iron, you can wash yourself properly. And you'd be surprised at how many people can't. And can you keep a clean locker? Can you keep this done? Can you do that? Can you march properly? And it's all preparing you for a different way of life that, unless you've been in it, a lot of people don't really understand what it's all about.
We know that ultimately you ended up as a physical training instructor. Do you have much recollection of your experience as a? Did you say you're a rating? Is that right? Is that the?
Yeah. The way that the Navy works, you are a rating. So you're just an ordinary sailor, an ordinary seaman. Then you progress to an able seaman. Then you progress to a leading seaman. Because I was in the seaman branch, which again is different to how it is now. In order to become a physical training instructor, you had to join the seaman branch, which meant that you did all the tying and knots and you looked after the ship, you painted the ship. And then there was other jobs like gunnery, sonar and radar. And I was a sonar operator. I chose that. The job there was sitting in a room a little bit bigger than most people's spare bedroom, if that, with a pair of earphones on, looking at a screen, giving funny colours and listening to the fish swimming in the sea and talking to each other, trying to detect enemy submarines. Whatever the weather, whatever the sea state, however you felt, you was in that room. And you kind of think, oh, what am I doing here? Well, especially when you're in a force 10 gale and you're sat there and you want to throw up, you kind of have misgivings of what have I done kind of thing. But once it all goes, it gets better. But you do that for a period of time. And as I said, to become a physical trainer, what you have then to do is put in a formal request. As I said, you have to be a leading hand. Now, that's the equivalent of a corporal in the army, in the Air Force. I was quite lucky because of my age at the time and because of being a sea cadet, and I had a lot of understanding of Navy ways. I went through promotion very, very quickly. A lot of the old stages didn't like it because I went from ordinary seaman to an able seaman very, very quickly. And I was specially selected to do that for that promotion because I passed all the tests, I did all the work, and I was up to scratch at the time. And as soon as I did that, they sent me to sea, and I had on the trot 2 different World War II destroyers, HMS Ulster and HMS Undaunted. Both of them are razor blades now. And spent all that time doing my time as a sailor, learning the ropes, learning about life at sea. But at the same time, I had my request in to become a PT as soon as I was eligible to do that.
Is there a PT already on the ship?
Yes, every ship, a frigate and above, has a physical training instructor on them.
And what do you remember of your experience as a as a rating under a physical training instructor on a ship? What do you remember from the exercise, the training, or the schedule that you would have been responsible for taking part in, not leading?
In what way do you mean? I got a bit confused.
No, that's all right. Sometimes I'm terrible at asking questions. What I'm after is, I suppose, is your experience on the other end of it. So you're on the ship and there is a PT. How does it work? Is there a schedule, or do they come and just grab you and say, right, we're working out now? Or?
No. What happened in my case is that, I made it known to the PTs on the ship that I was interested in becoming a PT. So they then take you under their wing and you become their runner. They send you on all stupid, silly things, like they go and say, well, I want you to go and get the green oil for the starboard lamp, and you go chasing around the ship asking people for the green oil, and there's no such thing, and all different things like that. But you learn the ropes under the PT of the ship. And then at the end of the day, they're the people that say, well, yes, this person will make a physical trainer. Yes, and they tell your division officer, your manager, that yes, he's worthy to go for an aptitude test. When there's a football team goes out, you then get all the kit ready for them. You collect the kit in, you take it down to the Dobie Waller, who then washes it up. You become a runner, but you're learning the ropes. You're serving your apprenticeship as a sailor, as well as doing your normal sailor job.
Where does exercise take place on a ship, and does it vary depending on the type of ship? Or
well, wherever you can. Normally it's on the quarterdeck. Now the quarterdeck's the blunt end, and normally that's an area where you can do it. Now, one of the ships I had was the Ark Royal, which is an aircraft carrier. You'd have thought, what a great place to do exercise on the flight deck. We were never allowed on the flight deck because the flight deck was always, there was aeroplanes, helicopters constantly taking off. When you could get up there and do stuff, brilliant, but it was very, very rare. So all you had was a small space. I would say generally half the size of a less than half the size of a badminton court.
And for how many people are working out in that space?
It's totally voluntary. When I was in, you would have circuit training would be on in the evening. Now, I call it circuit training because that's what it was. And we call it fitness training, and all we did was circuits because that's the way we were taught during our PT training, which lasted...
And it was voluntary.
Yeah, so you'd put it up and say that circuit training will take place on the quarterdeck 6 o'clock tonight, all comers welcome. And that was it. Whoever turned up, you took a class. The Royal Navy did not have any fitness policy. You didn't have to attain any level of fitness to carry on being a sailor.
I mean, you mentioned that one of your roles when you were operating, I don't know if operating the sonar is the correct term, but you sat down with headphones on, not very physical, but overall, globally speaking, is the life of a sailor quite a physical one? So is there a need for additional fitness, or
no.
Actually?
I mean, I'm saying no, but you're asking the wrong person that, because I would say there definitely was a need for it because of what we know about public health now, and the fact that the new smoking is sitting down and being inactive. And this was always an argument.
So you could be at sea for a period of time and be inactive. It could be 6 months of inactive. Yeah. Okay.
It depended. The people that were interested in their own fitness, and in those days we had a competition called Field Gun. You may have seen it on
the Royal Tournament.
That's it. Well, you'd have your field gunners that were paramount, got to get their fitness in. So you always had...
But it occurs to me, just in case anyone's listening that doesn't know what that is, how would you explain that?
It's taking a bloody heavy weight, which is a gun and carriage.
And you say gun, I mean, I remember going to the Royal Tournament years ago. This might not be the terminology, but it's a cannon. This is a big thing.
It's a field gun. It's a field gun and limber. It's similar to what you see towed behind horses at ceremonial occasions when they do Queen gun salutes. It's very similar to that. Yeah. The history behind it is Ladysmith in South Africa during the Boer War. A ship unloaded its guns and the sailors had to pull these guns all the way to Ladysmith over the land in order to fight the enemy. And it became a retold story by, you have to take this gun apart, you have to take it over walls, you have to take it through walls, you have to put it back together again, you have to take it across a zip wire, but you have to put the zip wire up first. If anyone not sure of it and they want to see it, just go into a YouTube search on field gun and just sit and watch with awe.
And it really is awe. And
Yeah.
it would be, I think, disingenuous to consider the field gun the only weapon involved, because the sailors that perform these, I mean, they're very dangerous looking human beings. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And the training program and what they used to do, it's extremely physical, but at the same time, extremely dangerous. People would lose fingers. People would break legs. Yeah, it was a very dangerous sport, but it was an exhilarating sport. I must admit, I've never done it. I never had the want to do it, but I admire the people that did do it, because I think that the level of fitness that they had to get to do that, and it's not just the level of fitness, but the technical expertise of what they had to do as well.
Precision, absolute precision.
Absolutely.
The way they...
And working with other people, and the spit, and everything was against the clock. So, because there's another element of danger there, which is speed.
And again, this is a participation is voluntary. This is
absolutely,
you make it known that you'd like to take part, and you train for it, and you're either you make the grade or you don't.
Yeah, there's aptitude test. It's like any specialist qualification. You have to go and do an aptitude test to see if you are fit enough and you have the right mental capacity to actually do that.
I'm aware that I'm getting excited by these tangents, which is great. But I do want to ask then how, or what you remember from your training once you've now been accepted onto the physical training instructor course or program. You've served an apprenticeship to a degree under the PTs on the ships.
Yeah.
What's that process like? That in terms of education, how long does it take? Where does it take place?
Okay, well, there is a designated school of PT in Portsmouth. When I did it, it was called the Royal Naval School of PT. Then later on, it got changed. It became a commissioned ship, and it was called HMS Temeraire, which is in Portsmouth. When you've been accepted for an aptitude test, you go to Temeraire and you do a 3-day aptitude test with another cohort of people that want to go there. Again, you're given lectures and you're given tests. You're given lots and lots and lots of physical to see how you could cope with the trainings to come. You're told the way ahead, etc., etc.
Is this a selection process?
This is the selection process.
So potentially you'd have applied. You've gone for these 3 days, and if you don't make the grade, that's it.
That's it. You're done. And people walk off because it's too much for them. They think all they're going to do is play sport and that, but it's not that at all. It's very much about your own physical prowess, maintaining the standards of the physical training branch and the stresses that are put on you. And I'll talk more about that later on. But at the end of the 3 days, you go and see the commanding officer, all the staff instructors that have been involved in your training over the 3 days. They then sit down and say who's made it and who hasn't. And you go in and see the commanding officer and he says, well done, you've made it, or I'm sorry, you haven't made it. I think you need a bit more time in the fleet. Please come back and see us again, but you're not ready yet. You then go back to your ship, and then you have to wait until you're called forward to form a cohort of guys who start training together. In my cohort, we had, I think it was 12 of us, 11 of us finished. One guy got back class because he injured himself, but he was too good to say, you're finished. When you get the call, you go to Temeraire, and your first day is really, you get all your kit, you're told what's happening, you get where you're going to sleep, what you're going to do. And that is the first day of a 6-month course. The 6 months course is teaching you how to be a physical training instructor, how to teach physical training, how to teach the type of physical training the Navy teaches its new recruits. It also, you go through, I would say, all the major sports, learn how to play, officiate, and coach all the major sports, and you get qualified in quite a few of them if you want to. And then there's a period of that time when you go up into North Wales and you spend a couple of weeks up in the mountains in North Wales doing outdoor activities, rock climbing, mountaineering, map reading, canoeing, all those and potholing.
And that's because you'll be teaching those type of activities as well.
Well, it's not necessarily, but you can go down that avenue if you want to.
So it's to give you a base in that.
Absolutely. And certainly, I don't think they do it now, but certainly on my course, we then went down to Royal Marines Lympstone for 3 days. And we had a 3-day beasting by the Marines doing a very tailored, all the physical parts of a Royal Marine entry course. So what they go through, doing all their Tarzan courses and like Tough Mudder, but a lot more complex type of assault courses that we were doing and training. Yeah, and the type of day you would get is you'd get to the PT school about 7 o'clock in the morning. You'd make sure that your singlet shorts were perfectly white and that they had the right creases in them. You made sure that your gym shoes, your plimsolls were white and they had no brown stains on them, that you were pristine, but you also had a spare set just in case, because often, many times you've gone into the toilet and you've been minding your own business, sat down doing your business, and all of a sudden a bucket of water would come flying over the top of you. And there you are soaked. And you dare not turn up in a pristine condition. This is all kind of character building. Once you'd had your parade in the morning, the next thing you'd do is your first workout of the day. And that would be one of the class would be teaching the rest of the class how to take about an hour's training session. The training session would take the form of daily exercises as your warm-up, which what we would know today as mobility exercises and stretching. You'd then do vaulting across the type of horse or buck that you would have had at school. We then did a series of rope climbing, and you'd have to do all different climbs from the ropes. Now, all this comes from the old-fashioned sailing days, and they kept it up. I believe it's all changed now. You'd then do a circuit. When you finish the circuit, you'd then go on to what they would call now a finisher, but we used to call it RT games, and you would put some kind of game in there, be it deck hockey, relay races, or anything like that. And then you'd finish off with a final kind of stretching. You'd do that first thing in the morning and first thing after dinner. You do 2 of those a day, but on top of those, you'd also do other physical stuff. Like you might have, you might have some rugby sessions, you might have some boxing sessions, and you'd be looking at the physical parts of those. So you'd be doing physical all day long. The worst part was going into the classroom, because you'd go into the classroom and learn the theory type of stuff. And then you knew you had to come out of the classroom, go to another physical, but you'd stiffened up. And you think, oh my God, here we go again. Of course, generally you're wearing the same whites as you was in when you did your first circuit. So you're feeling a bit crabby and goodness knows what else. And you'd finished your day about 5 o'clock, and it depended on your course instructor, and it depends on how good you'd been, whether or not he wanted to beast you with another circuit that night before you went home. But then you didn't go home, because what you then had to do is go and wash all your kit by hand, clean or scrub off your gym shoes white. It was a regime that was very strict, and lo and behold, if you didn't marry up to the mark, you were out of there quicker than anything.
Are there days off in this process, or is this every day?
You got Saturday and Sunday off.
So it's a Monday to Friday.
Monday to Friday,
9-10 hours a day.
Yeah, full on, sometimes longer.
Wow.
And sometimes I can remember being in there till about 9 o'clock at night, because it would be rehearsing what you're going to do the next morning. If it was your turn to take the workout, you had to think, right, I've got to plan it. Now I've planned it. So it was all down on a lesson plan. You then had to go and rehearse it. So it's preparation, have all my kit in the right place. And then the only way you could do that is to go through it. So you'd find some of your mates on course, say, can you give us a hand tonight? And can we run through it? And everyone did. So most evenings, you wouldn't leave there till about 8-9 o'clock at night.
There are elements from what you've just described that don't appeal. I don't fancy putting creases in my singlet. In fact, I don't fancy wearing a singlet. But what I love about what you've described in terms of an educational experience is that you're not just learning stuff about exercise. It's not just in the classroom, this is the humerus, this is how a joint, clearly that is important, but you're actually doing physical stuff. You're playing sports and you're doing workouts every day. Yeah. And that's important because experience is the best teacher. And so whoever you instruct, whenever you instruct, forever, you know what it feels like. That's really important. But also, and this is I think that is something that people miss in education today, not just in our industry, but I imagine in schools and in further education. It's that camaraderie. It's learning with other people, because education now is so quick. It's in, out, here's some information, hold on to as much as you can, and hopefully you'll have enough to pass an assessment. Whereas you talked about doing lesson plans together. And I think that's lovely. I think that's how education should be.
Well, yes. I mean, you spend the first 3 months doing these physical tables, and then the second 3 months is about doing workouts based on a sport. So, for instance, you didn't normally pick your sports. You put your hand in and you picked it out. And I remember one day I got football, and I didn't play football. And I'm thinking, gosh, how do I put this together? So, of course, this is where you look at the footballers on the course and say, look, can you give me a hand with this? And, I've got to do this, I've got to do an hour's workout on just football. I've got to do drills. I've got to do this. I've got to work out how to get a football team match fit, and to make it so that everything that's in the workout is conducive to what they're doing. And you couldn't do it unless you had the team around you and the help around you. But you always knew the people that weren't team players, because they were the ones that wouldn't be there to help. And when it was their time to start, people wouldn't help them. It was really obvious that, you either work as a team or you're on your own, kind of thing.
And that transfers into almost any other experience in life. And I really feel that that's missed a lot. It's certainly in our industry, that sense of team has been replaced by kind of competition, and there's me and there's them. And whereas actually what you did, because one of the great things about spending time with you has always been that you're keen to share, and also you want to ask, whoever's around us, you're asking them questions, and you want to learn from other people. So that, I'm sure some of that is natural, but certainly a degree of that has been instilled in you as a result of that experience.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt. I mean, we used to have such sayings like, to miss a day's training is to sow the seeds of failure. The obvious one, there's no kind of I in team, but yeah, it does set you up. The only downside to it is that when you then get a draft to a ship, you're on your own.
Right,
so
okay.
You've had all these people around you, but over 6 months there, and then you go to a shore establishment, hopefully. And as soon as I finished my training, I went to a shore establishment called HMS Ganges, which was down in Ipswich. And I joined a staff of over 20 experienced physical training instructors. So I was lucky, because I could then again feed off of them and learn my trade in a big gymnasium and a big swimming pool for when I did eventually go to sea. And what happened was I flew out to Singapore, and I joined a ship, HMS Whitby, and it was my first ship as a PT. And you're like a fish out of water. You kind of think, right, what do I do? And the downside for me was the fact that the guy who I was relieving, he had already gone. So he couldn't show me the ropes.
Well, but you're literally the only PT on the ship.
Yeah, you're the only one. I mean, Whitby was a frigate. There was about 180 sailors and officers on there, all male. And your role is to do your job as a sailor. So I was a seaman first, but I was also the ship's PTI. But I had several jobs. The jobs you weren't defined as only one job. So what I had was, I used to steer the ship in and out of harbour. I used to do seamanship evolutions when we were at sea. But also during the day, I would have to I didn't have to, but I took circuit training twice a day, once at lunchtime, once at night time. And then when we come into harbour, it would be a question of, okay, I've got to organise the football team going here, the rugby team going there, or we're playing hockey over there, or the squash players want to be playing there. So you're arranging all these games with other ships, other organisations, schools, colleges.
And is that as a result of your own proactivity, or does that come from above? Is it right?
That's the job.
You go and find teams to play, or liaise with PTs.
Yeah, normally they're there. You kind of, for instance, I remember on another ship I was on, we went to Liverpool, and myself and one of the officers, we drove drove up to Liverpool before the ship got in, and we were the liaison. So our job was we would liaise with John Moores College, university. Can we have a game of football against you and a game of rugby against you? The ship will be in then. Would you be? Yeah. And we'd arrange, and that was our job, is to arrange it all. Then when it's all arranged and the ship comes in, you're back on the ship, and then you're arranging all the teams.
So a good PT is not just someone that knows a bit about exercise and sport, can coach, but actually they've got to be someone that is motivated to go and make things happen, to create these experiences.
You're almost a cruise director, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
That's what I mean. When I was on the Ark Royal, I also worked the CC television. So what we did, we had our own recording studio, and we used to make up our own question of sport, and we would take outtakes. So you'd have all the equipment, and you'd be spending hours doing that. And then another job you'd have when you're at sea, you'd say, okay, we've got to do some things. So you'd have a horse racing night, or you'd have bingo nights, and you'd be entertaining the crew whilst you were at sea. You were literally a jack of all trades.
You sit down with a blank page and you create that.
Yeah. Your predecessor might have done X, and you think, well, I don't want to do X. I want to bring myself into this. I'm going to do Y. Obviously, it depends on the ship's program. It depends on the size of the ship as to what you can or you can't do. But yeah, I mean, I can remember we was out on the Whitby one day with the Americans, and the captain called down and asked me to come to his cabin. I went up to his cabin, and he said, right, the Yanks are going in for a day. We've got a day off exercise. I want you to organise something that is a whole ship's activity. I said, yes, sir. When's that? He said, tomorrow. So what you've now got to do is think, I've got to come up with some kind of, it's a knockout. Have I got all the kit? What can I do? Have I got anyone that can help me? And away you go. And this is where, you're putting yourself about the ship to make sure that you've got people that can help you out, and this, that, and that. Oh yeah, it's a full-on job. Great job.
So I'm almost searching now for vacancies. I mean, it does sound like the dream job in very many ways. In the fitness industry, you are known as many things, but certainly Bob Hope and circuit training goes together very well. And you've used that term a few times already. And I didn't know. I know it's been a big part of your world for a long time. I didn't know it went back as far as Sea Cadets at the age of 14. But do you think, because we've known each other now for 15, 16 years, and yet every time we're together, you've got a new exercise or a new piece of equipment, you just never run out. And do you think that comes from using an environment such as a ship, which is not designed for exercise, and so you have to be creative?
Most definitely.
Or nothing's going to happen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I was probably poor at it, and I know some of my colleagues who were PTIs, and I kind of sit in awe at some of the stuff they used to do, and I'm thinking, wow. But I've never always been someone that would say, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to say, well, okay, I'll do something similar to that, but I'll put my spin on it. Rather than completely copy someone's stuff. But yeah, you've got to be creative. When you've got a small space, a very, very small space, and there's lots of health and safety hazards, you've got no headroom overhead because you might have a flight deck above you, and you've got to think, what can I do? You'll understand this. When you talk about concentric and eccentric, concentric is the lifting and eccentric the lowering. But when the ship's going up and down at the same time, you're going in the opposite direction, you kind of think, hang about, was that concentric or eccentric? It really messes with your head. Yeah, you do. You just, I mean, we didn't have things like suspension training equipment. We didn't have things like power bags. We didn't even have weights on a ship. We didn't have a gym on the ship. I had the Ark Royal, which was an aircraft carrier. These new aircraft carriers we've now got, they've got a gym on there with God knows how many treadmills, upright bikes, and they've got a section of the hangar that is designated as a gym.
And so you had no area designated and literally no equipment. There was nothing on that ship that was only there to be exercised with.
Only if you made it yourself. So you kind of might have found a bit of anchor cable and think, oh, this will do. Used to turn up. We had no mats. So what you'd do is you'd go down and find out if you get a bit of foam rubber, and the amount of people you'd see coming with duck bottoms because they had lumps of foam rubber stuffed down their shorts because that was their mat. Because if you're laying on a surface, you don't have to get chafed. if you're doing things like curl ups or anything like that. So having a bit of foam rubber down your backside was a godsend. That was your mat.
I'm half asking, half guessing, I suppose, but you're on a ship for quite a while. It's a period of months. Is that fair?
Well, you get a commission with a ship. You normally do anything from 18 months to 2 years on the ship.
But how long is that ship at sea?
It depends on the program.
Okay.
It could be 9 months.
So
You could leave your home port and not come back for 9 months.
and is there some synergy with a leisure centre in a way? In that, you've got your Monday night circuits. Do you kind of have a Monday night circuit crew? Do you have the same kind of people that
Oh,
are
yeah. Yeah, you do. You, as I said, you have your kind of people that are really into their fitness. They will turn up. You'll also have those people that will do their own fitness. They'll find a space somewhere. And I mean, we had a couple of cyclists on one of the ships I was on, and they would take their rollers on, and you'd see them up on the upper deck with their rollers on their bike. You're always going to get some people that do their own thing. The hardest thing for me was to get the people that didn't do it, to try and get them encouraged to come. So we used to have a chuffs and puffs circuit, which was for the older people, and it was the kind of senior rates, your petty officers, your chiefs, the people that think, oh, I'm not doing fitness, what do I want to do that? I'm going down the bar kind of thing. But eventually we started winning them over, and to win them over, we did little bits of fitness testing with them, and we just did basic things. How many of these could you do in a given time? Not worried of technique, just do them. And then, hopefully they'd start coming to workouts. But the downside of that is when the ship then, she might have been away at sea for, let's say, 3 weeks. After that 3-week exercise, they come back into harbour, they go back into their normal lives. They don't think of fitness anymore because it's kind of, I'm not on the ship anymore. Whilst I'm on the ship, this is me. But when I'm at home, I'm a gym member. I've paid me money, but I ain't going.
So perhaps if you could have turned them on a little bit further and a little bit earlier, but on a longer.
Yeah.
What is lovely is, you've used the word beasting earlier on, and you do have that connection when you think of the military about people being beasted, but you're trying to cater for a much broader range of people, and what you're trying to make exercise is accessible, and there are no barriers. There are, if you want to come and work out, then come and do this class, and we'll give you this flavor, this experience. But actually, if you're, if it isn't your thing and you're a bit nerd, then you're creating experiences for them too. That's fabulous.
Well, you try to, but you also find there's a lot of the guys that didn't used to come and do the physical, they would play sports. And I know it doesn't work out. And it's one of the things I've always said is that, look, you don't play sport to get fit. You get fit to play sport. But if you've got guys that play sport and that's the only fitness they get, I'd stand there and clap my hands, because at least they're doing some form of physical activity. When they've been, the worst period of time for me on a ship was during the Rhodesian oil saga. I forget when that was. And we had a 1 mile line that we had to patrol. We had to steam up it for a mile and then drift back. It was in the Mozambique Canal, just off Mozambique. We did that for 7 weeks. Now that is mind-numbing. Absolutely mind-numbing. And that's when I had to work my hardest to try and keep the morale up and get people doing stuff, because they couldn't go off and play sport. They couldn't do this. So we played volleyball. We had a flight deck. We played volleyball. But what we did was you used to have loads of rags wrapped up in, we had a volleyball, but then it was surrounded with masking tape with a string on it, and that was tied to the net. So that because if you hit the ball too hard, you'd lose it over the side. And we used to play
one ball, it becomes quite precious.
Oh, absolutely. And we used to play deck hockey and things like that around the obstacles that were there. It became very vicious. And, the amount of people that nearly went over the side was unbelievable. It's what you do, is what you're trained for. And I think that when I look at colleagues of mine that are PTs, highly trained physical trainers that realistically have got a lot to offer. And I know a lot of them now. I know people that are with professional sports clubs. I know them got their own gyms. I know some that are working in gyms. They are an asset to anyone. All 3 services PTs, they are an asset to people that can get hold of them, because of the training they've had.
So you've talked about the training, but you've just said something that interests me. When you were stuck on a ship for that long period of time, and it sounds like your motivation was, and I don't know if it was conscious or not, or if at least, I think it was conscious, but whether it was framed this way, but you were trying to support mental health as much as physical.
Oh,
at that time.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
and you were clearly doing that, but was that language uh,
No,
so you weren't thinking of it as mental health, and you weren't trained in mental, it
no.
was just about keeping people's spirits up? Or
Yeah. I mean, mental health awareness is a modern term.
but you were doing
Um,
it, and
yeah, but you weren't. The thing is that the Royal Naval Physical Training Branch's motto, if I can remember it, is mens sana in corpore, healthy body, healthy mind. I rest my case because one equals the other. And that's what they were, they were talking about. Ever since I've come out of the Navy, they've always looked at the fact that we deal with health related fitness, and part of it is about mental health, societal health. It's all in there, but it's only recently, more so because of this pandemic, and I think more so because of the way people lead their lives, and everyone is kind of, we want it now society. And if you look at fitness now, it's all about, can you afford it? When you look at gymnasia, it's not affordable. Affordable gyms, they're not affordable.
there are
People,
more barriers
absolutely.
to health and fitness, or at least it feels that way, because there is that argument that ultimately fitness is free. That's a Keith Smithism, but you can open your door and off you go for a walk, go for a run, do some
Well,
push-ups, but it's that simple, but it's not that easy, is it,
no,
to
it
get
isn't.
yourself
But you
up
know
for that?
what? This pandemic has shown people just how easy it is.
Or at least how accessible it is. How,
Absolutely. I mean, I look at where I live and the amount of people in my little close here that I see going out for a walk, for a run, for a cycle. I've never seen it before. Now, you kind of think that physical activity, what is physical activity? It's doing something and value the fact that you're doing it. And I think more people are valuing the fact that they're going out for their daily exercise because it's what they've been enabled to do. And I think that's great. The more that people can keep that up, and the more that we do keep that up, and it's not just the phrase, oh, I've got to go to the gym.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really enjoy seeing people outside on their bikes, on their feet,
Mm.
walking right. It doesn't matter and there are definitely more people out embracing that. And that, as you say, that comes from necessity. The gyms are closed and they've got nothing else to do. And I think it's incredibly impressive that anybody is doing anything. I don't think that's the mindset of the average fitness professional, who is very centered around the gym and proper training and go hard, go home and all of that stuff. And I appreciate that the fitness industry is relatively new. How was the contrast for you when you left the Navy? I know you're obviously still in fitness, but did you move from fitness in the Navy to fitness in civilian life, or was there something in between? And what did you notice?
No,
What was the
I was
difference?
I was quite lucky actually, because one of the roles I ended up with was I ended up as the chief instructor of the Navy School of PT. So from being a new recruit into it in my early days, I became an instructor and then became the chief instructor of the School of PT, which was very much a position where I could influence policy. And I'm always a believer that if you can't do something about it, then shut up. And obviously I had lots of things that I felt needed changing. And the only place that I could do that was by getting this particular role. So I was at the School of PT and, we were looking at the way we were training physical trainers, and it was still very much based on old fashioned type of fitness where realistically there was no real adaptation alternatives provided, unless of course you had that inclination yourself. So I looked around to find out what we could do that aligned us with the civilian world. I'm going back to, when am I going back to? 1985, 86, 87. I saw that they had summer schools at Loughborough University. And one of the companies that was doing these summer schools was the Central YMCA in London. And they, at the time, I believe, were the only ones that were delivering fitness qualifications.
I was going to say, they must have been absolutely brand new at that
Absolutely
point.
was. It's been about, I think they'd only started with their exercise to music course about 3 years previous, if that. And the course that what I was looking at was the fitness training course, which I believe Keith spoke about before, which was based on weight training and circuit training. So I had a staff under me of about 10 other physical trainers. So I said that I got funding for half of them to go and do this 2-week intensive course up at Loughborough. When they came back, they were singing the course's praises. So we then obviously, we had meetings and they cascaded down the type of training that they did. And the person that started planning our courses started planning in sessions so that the new PTs could start learning how we could integrate our training with civilian populations. Because remember, we're not just working with service populations, we're also working with the families as well. So there was a requirement for that. The following year, I myself went up with the rest of my staff so that the whole of the staff had gone through this training. They all got the qualification. We were putting it into the way that we trained our physical trainers so that they could go out and then train themselves. Whilst I was up there,
before you get to that, Bob, because I'm curious to know what, having experienced your Navy training to become a trainer, and now you've done a course, one of the first courses to exist in the fitness industry to become an instructor there. How different were they, and what did you think of the?
Well, they were totally different. We had no ropes to climb, no vaulting horses to jump over. It was totally different. It put meat on the bone as far as different types of training were concerned. Now, we had weights in a weight room, but the only people who used to use the weights were the field gunners. So actually now, sitting down and going through a weights program, yes, they had the bowler weight training program, but it was different to theirs. It was not these, it was teaching you how to actually teach them and giving you alternatives and breaking them down. Now, most of the PTs that did this course, they enjoyed it, but they were different to the other people that were on the course. Because we all had coaching qualifications, which were national qualifications, we knew a lot about warming up, cooling down, the different type of exercises. We'd all served our apprenticeships as far as circuit training in some really weird situations, which we've already spoken about. But generally, the thing about it was new ways of doing it. And it was looking at, this is the way that the civilians are doing it. How does it fit within the service way? And it fitted really nicely. Yeah, it did make a difference. We got rid of the word beasting.
Well, okay, so I was going to ask, and that actually answers some of it to a degree. Was the big difference context? So content perhaps wasn't that different in terms of, we're learning how to do stuff, but the delivery of the application of that.
Yes, most definitely. Knowledge. Yeah, because as a PT doing a circuit, you were a motivator because you expected the guys that were doing the circuit to know what they were doing. So you just ranted, shouted, got them to do it. And the circuits we used to do were kind of 10 seconds on. If you were clever, you'd do 1 rep in that time. The thing is that it was a nonsense as far as I was concerned, although I went through the whole training because I was in awe of it all. But actually doing other people's qualifications and now doing this one that had been really well thought of by educators, and the way it was being delivered by educators made us think, do you know what, this is more about education. And this is about making sure people are exercising safely. And if they can't exercise doing that, then maybe if we offered them this, it would be better. And actually throwing a 60-pound weight around for 10 seconds above your head and then just dropping it on the floor may not be good for your back. And all these questions were being answered.
Do you know what? It takes a lot for someone to accept those types of questions. And so I think that says a lot about all of you that have, that are highly experienced and qualified and trained professionals in your own right, and yet still you're open to the idea that actually maybe we can look at this from a different angle, and there's quite a bit here to learn. I think that says an awful lot about the character of those individuals.
Well, yeah, and I do know that when I eventually left Temeraire, because I went to another job, they started getting people to go to Temeraire and they were doing other courses. And I believe they've done some recent stuff with them. So they're training using experienced outdoor training providers is ongoing. And I'm really pleased about this because, every day is a training day. not training your body, but training your mind, training your brain. And that's how it should be. And anyone that says, no, I've learned as much as I can, well, do you know what? You're in the wrong job.
I interrupted you early on when I think you were going to talk to us about connecting with the YMCA in a more meaningful way in terms of becoming a tutor or a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
What's the rest of that story?
Well, what happened was at the end of it, the instructor that we had there, who I really thought was brilliant, a guy called Robin Gargrave, he just called me over quietly and said, he's impressed with what I've done and the fact that I've, all the people that I've brought up to do the course is open to it. Would I be interested in coming and getting involved with them to do some work with them? And of course, I thought, wow, yes, please, I'd like to. And I went away from there, and about a year later, I got involved by observing some assessments and then eventually being an assessor. And then eventually I was asked to do a course, and I said, I haven't seen a course yet. He said, you've done a course and I think you've got enough experience. Here's your aims and outcomes. Go and do it. So I was lucky in as much as fast track through to actually deliver a course, because the guy had he believed that I could do it, and I ran my first course. I made lots of mistakes. I fell over, but I was experienced enough to pick myself up, dust myself down and say, do you know what? Forget that. This is what we want to talk about. And
Who was it to, Bob? Who were you delivering that? Is that to the military, or that was civilians?
It was with civilians. I actually only ever delivered one course to the military, and the rest of the time was to civilians. And that's all I've ever done. And in fact, I spent longer as a tutor than I did in the Navy. I spent just under 25 years in the Navy, but I spent 31 years as a tutor delivering exercise and fitness.
You've got a new experience in that you're now delivering a course as a tutor. And then on top of that, you're in a new environment, which is civilian over military.
Well, initially I was doing them both. I was still in, and I was doing, I was working at the Royal Naval College in Greenwich as the PTI there. I was asked if I'd go up and deliver as an assistant the course at Loughborough, and I met I was working with an excellent man up there. He was so excellent I've forgotten his damn name now. That's a senior moment, by the way. I went up there for 2 weeks. I got leave from my job down in Greenwich, and I went up there to do that. And then when I finished that, I came back down to Greenwich. What was interesting after that, the next day after that, my wife and we then went to Buckingham Palace to the Royal Garden Party. So it was
lovely.
quite a do. But yeah, no, it's for about 2 to 3 years I was still in the Navy, but doing the civilian job as well.
Over that period, that 2 years, did it happen right at the start, or even was there a time where you consciously either reflected on or considered your I don't know if it's your teaching style or your mannerism? Were you aware that, okay, look, I've been in a military environment for a long time, I'm now not. I need to think about the things I say or the way I say them or my expectations. Was there a process of developing a new philosophy or mindset or of adapting?
To be honest with you, no, I don't think there was. I think that part of my success, if it was a success, was the fact that I was very disciplined in what I did. I had discipline in the classroom, and certainly the students that I was working with, they understood that. It's hard to explain. It wasn't a dictatorial way of, you will do this, but people knew how far they could go with me before they themselves would hang about. We can't go any further.
Standards and boundaries, I think.
I think that's right. And I think also I had quite a bit of, I hope I did, respect because of my military service. I personally still admire people that have had military service. And I think it's just one of those things. I look at the old timers from the Second World War, and a tear comes into my eyes because I have great respect for them. See all their medals and everything. And I think that stands for something, because I do know that I've worked with a group of people, and then the same group of people have had someone else who've been very woolly, very laid back, and the results were half of what they were from the first person. Does that make sense?
No, completely. And I think it's actually one of the greatest challenges of teaching is establishing where those boundaries are, and then what's it? I'll use establishing again, but then establishing what you're going to do when people cross those boundaries. Because when people have a sense of where they are, they feel safer. And I think that they can explore that space with more confidence. And we do the same with children. We give them boundaries and let them know, well, hang on a minute, that's acceptable and that's not. And they might not like it or think they like it, but they absolutely respond in a very positive way. There is that feeling of, it is safety, it is comfort, it is reassurance. So I think it's really important, but maybe it's an advantage then having a military background.
I believe so, because again, I've sat in and watched other people, and everybody has their own style, and sometimes I think that boundaries are being invaded that have been set by the tutor, and the people that are watching are very clever, and if they see that the tutor themselves are invading their own boundaries, it's open season. I mean, you and I had an incident when we was working together where certain people were using a weights room and started to abuse people that were in there, and I had no compunction that. I discussing it with yourself, I said, that's it. They're banned from using that room because no one would own up who it was that was doing it. So I think you have to say no. And so, these were big guys, some of them. You've got to do that. You've got to stand up and say, you cannot go out and do that if you're in the industry. And sad as it might seem, that sometimes I've gone around gyms and I've looked at instructors and I'm thinking, I just wouldn't employ you. Because I look at how you're behaving in the gym with your clients, and it's just, no, it's not right. But then they're my values. They're not everyone's values.
I suspect, if not consciously, that there's been maybe it's just an evolution of your personality and your character and your teaching style. Because I definitely see those boundaries, but towards the experiences we've had more recently compared to my very first experience as a student was, you were my teacher 16 years ago, I think now 17 maybe. And there was maybe more of military Bob then than I think there is now. But also I was aware very early on, of a philosophical side. And I wonder where that comes from. And I want to use a quote that I feel very lucky that my first experience as a student in fitness, I had two teachers on my course, and one was you, one was Paul Bedford. And I quote both of you all the time, and I use the same quotes. And with Paul Bedford, it's that we should never make someone feel awkward, ugly, or uncomfortable. Yeah. Yours, you stood up and said, I want to die as young as possible, as late as possible. And I won't lie, that took me a while to work it out. It really did. It set with me for a little while. And once I'd got it, I thought that makes complete sense. And that should absolutely be all of us, our primary motivation for looking after ourselves, to be younger for longer, to be able to engage with the world, to participate and to get more out of it for the longest possible period of time. Where did that come from? Do you think that philosophical side of you?
I think it's learning, it's reading, and it's kind of taking stuff through talking with other people. I'm not so sure that that's not a quote from a guy called Ralph Paffenbarger. And I'm sure that I used to read a lot of him, and his book was called Life. It was really looking at health over the ages and looking at how exercise, fitness affects our health and our mental well-being. An excellent book. I think it's out of print now. But no, I think it's just in 30 odd years, I've come across hundreds, if not thousands, of different students that I've sat and talked with, and I've listened to what they've said, and some of what they've said has stuck in my mind. I've also am very lucky in as much as when I was in the Navy, I worked with some very highly motivated individuals who were PTIs. When I left the Navy, I thought, can I get that back again? And I was lucky because I worked with some very, very highly motivated, intelligent tutors. And so realistically, since I was 1969 to here we are. And I retired last year at 2020. I've been lucky in that my pool of knowledge and excellence has been about the people that I've surrounded myself with. And you've mentioned two of them today. You've mentioned Dr. Paul Bedford, you've mentioned Keith Smith, you've mentioned, or you haven't yet, but you've already spoken to him, Lincoln Blanfield. You've got people like Debbie Lawrence, you've got people like yourself, Robin Gargrave, people that have got so much knowledge and wisdom that you can't but listen to them. I mean, I sit every day on LinkedIn and I just see what Dr. Paul Bedford has to say. And often I'd sit and reflect on it thinking, yeah, I agree with that.
See,
Yeah.
you've used the word luck, and I use the same word when I describe my experience. I feel incredibly blessed that I turned up for my first day and you and Paul were there. That my next course, I think, was Keith and Carlos, I think, on the next one. I feel very lucky that these people entered my world. But then you also said something which I think is really pertinent and mustn't be discounted. You've just said that you still look actively at what Dr. Paul Bedford is saying and what he's posting. So is there an element of luck? There absolutely is. There is absolutely an element of luck that we meet these people, that we come across them, and we're put in environments where they operate. But then there is something that comes from within, that you go and seek them out and to either read their stuff, ask them questions, learn from them. And I'm pretty sure I've rehashed this quote already, and I'm equally sure that I've not 100% sure on who said it. It was Henry Ford, I think, that we become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And again, we might be lucky in respect of who comes into our life, but the ones we hang on to, there's a choice there. And I feel incredibly lucky, but I also know that, I will come and ask you questions, and I will, if there's an opportunity to spend time with you, I'll take it. And I think you've just described doing the same with the people that have inspired you and had things that you wanted to have. And I think you need to take credit for that, as well as it's equally valuable when measured with luck.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of waffle there. I hope you can take something out of it.
No, I got it. Yeah, I'm with you. I've got it.
Teaching it's interesting. I didn't know that you wanted to become a school teacher first.
Yeah, that was my first thing.
And actually, you, other than the fact that you didn't work in a school, you essentially did become a school teacher.
Yeah, it's full circle, really. Yeah, I mean, I never worked in schools, but I ended up working in further education, and I was being fortunate to do a couple of jobs in higher education. But I ended up doing what I first wanted to do, which, as I said to you right at the beginning, I always knew where I was going to go, and I knew how I was going to get there. Sometimes you have to make your own luck. Sometimes you are lucky, but definitely I can sit here and say that realistically I haven't done a day's work in my life, because everything I've done I've enjoyed doing, and it hasn't been a day's work. It's been something that I've enjoyed and wanted to do, and I feel very blessed that I've been able to do that. And I can quote Keith Smith now, and I thoroughly loved it. But I also feel that I have given a lot of passion and shown passion whilst doing it.
100%. There's not a single person that if they know you, and I happen to have mentioned your name, their ears prick up. They could be somewhere else in the room, and it is like a rabbit that senses. They're like, Bob Hope, because I think you have had such a huge impact on people and people's lives, but with a combination of things. I think it's again, disingenuous to think that it's passion alone. That's not enough. You can stand up and be excited, and people will be engaged in that moment. But you have to give them something for them to keep that with them in the long term. And I think that it is unrivaled. It's not even just your knowledge, because I think something that really sticks with me, and it is personal to me. It was around 2008. You came to me and said, Paul, look what I found. And you had a TRX with you. And I'm looking at it thinking, what is that? And you knew everything about it. You knew the history of it. You were showing me how it works. I mean, I don't think they were launched in the UK until 2010 officially. No. And yet, because you showed me that early, I was able to find one. I spent the rest of 2008 and 2009. That was the first time that I was able to take on clients in an outdoor environment. and in their homes using a TRX. And I was then able to open the gym early 2010, essentially with a bunch of TRXs, because I thought,
Excellent.
I've got a gym. If you've got a TRX, you've got a gym. But that was you that brought that to me. With all of those years that you've been in the industry, there's not a single element of complacency about you. There's nothing about you says, well, I've been doing this a long time. I'm quite good at it. I'm happy with where I am. There's just that endless hunger for more. And I think yes, it's your passion, but it's your enthusiasm. Maybe that's a key component. Coupled with that knowledge, that unique experience, it is, a day spent with you is a day that is worth, it's the equivalent
That's very kind of you to say that.
A few months with us. Well, it's an observation. I'm part of the catchphrase generation, so I just say what I see. And I do see that. I do see people deeply affected by the time they spend with you, and it's lovely. And certainly, as I say, certainly I have been, and I've always enjoy our company. But at the same time, I often feel like I can't keep up. What has he got now? There's just toys. Look, Paul, look, and it's either look what I've found or look what I've made. Mm-hmm. The door will go up in the back of your car and something will come out, and it's
well, again, it must come from time spent in the Navy on board ships, that you have to be creative, and I feel that the exercise and fitness is hard enough for most people most of the time, but if you can come up with something that inspires them to do something, and a piece of equipment, however easy it is, and they've got something in their, I can do this, and it will enthuse them to take up or do exercise, then so be it. Trouble we have now, we've got so much equipment in these gyms, but very few people know how to use them, and very few of them have the creativity to say, well, what can I do with this? That, to my mind, is what's the point of having all this equipment if you haven't got the people with the creativity to use it? And that's a sad state of affairs. And I also feel that I still use the word circuit training, and I will always use it.
Because that's what it is. That's what it is.
But there are so many people that have looked at and dissed that word. It's not, I can remember a tutor saying to me, Bob, can you give me some exercises? I'm doing a class tonight. I said, a circuit class. He said, I'm not allowed to call it that. And that was at Gym Box. And I'm thinking, well, do you know what? It's crazy. Why not? That's what it is. It's something that can be marketed, but it just isn't. I always believe, and you know my philosophy as far as it's concerned, the wheel always turns, the name will come back.
Yeah, I do think it's an unfortunate name sometimes, because it is, it's exactly what it is. And almost all of, I quite confidently would suggest that anybody listening, if they've done a workout, they've probably done a circuit, whether they knew it or
absolutely.
not, because almost everything is a circuit. It's not a sexy or on-trend phrase, but I do think it's a shame that I don't mind actually that if the gym doesn't want to call it circuit training, if they want to call it something else, Bobby's Booty Boot Camp, I'm fine with that. What's a shame is that the industry doesn't recognize it. So no. if the gym doesn't, that's okay. But if they understood the value of circuit training and at least then invested in their instructors developing the skills of circuit training, I think that things would be a lot more exciting.
I think the industry itself missed the point when they changed the way training was, and they brought in the new gym qualification, and they took the circuits out and they put cardiovascular in, and they made circuit training a CPD. My view is they should have kept it as it was and made the CV a CPD.
It did at least used to be a mandatory CPD. So my experience as a student was that circuit training was not on the gym course, although we did a bit because you were the teacher. But in order to become a personal trainer, I had to do a circuit training CPD.
In the early days, they did do that. But you see, you have a lot of tutors that aren't group exercise teachers. Consequently, that was when the syllabus says they've got to teach a group, they don't know how to themselves.
And so avoid it.
Yeah, unless, of course, it's a choreographed piece of music, then they can do that. But, it's taken the skills of what circuit training is away from them. It is sad, whereas CPD based on aerobic fitness, because all they're doing in the aerobic fitness is cardiovascular machines. That can be taught in a weekend. But they brought in a gym circuit once, which, again, very few people could do it because they're not that way inclined. mind, because they brought out the personal trainer. What does personal training mean? Not group exercise, it's personal training. But at the end of the day, it is circuit training. I agree.
I certainly wish that more people were aware of circuit training, were skilled in circuit training, because I really think it is, as you were doing on the ship, you can create a circuit training class for the people that really want to have a workout, but you can also use circuit training. What yours was called the chuggers and puffers, is that right?
Yeah.
I think that circuit training is such a versatile tool to create new, different, accessible exercise experiences, and especially right now, it's exactly the stuff that I can go into the garden and I can do a circuit because I've got a little wall which is like a high step. I can jump on it or step on it, dip on it, push up on it. It is almost like my little bit of ship. And
yes.
So I can look at any environment and have a workout. And I do think that's the skill that circuit training does. I should absolutely encourage anybody listening to buy one of your 2 circuit training books. I'm sure they're available to all sorts of places, but I think I got both of mine from Amazon. Is there still something in you that, I know you retired last year from delivering education, but do you still enjoy working with the public? I know you do some training with your grandson, but on a personal training or a group teaching level, do you still enjoy it, or would you like to continue doing things like that?
Yes and no. I'm someone that's into something fully or not at all. And at the moment the moment I said that I was going to retire, for me, that was it. You have to finish somewhere. I retired 5 years after I should have done. And I kind of said to myself, that's it. You've got to leave it all behind. So the fact of wanting to do personal training, I don't have the want anymore. The fact of turning out and teaching a circuit class now, I kind of think to myself, no, I've done that now. I've passed that state in my life now. Now is the time for me and my family. I'm quite happy in the state that I'm at now, that I'm doing a lot of things now that I haven't been able to do. I'm doing lots of reading. I'm still reading about fitness. The crazy thing is I still access websites. I still get my books out. I've been reading books, some psychology books, but I've been reading a lot of novels and just enjoying doing nothing, to be quite honest with you. Because when I think about 30, 40, I've been doing my job both in the Navy and out of it for over 50 years. And I think to myself, there comes a time when enough is enough. Do I miss it? I suppose part of me does, but then I've filled it up with other stuff that I do with my family. And that's taken that want away. Do I keep my eye on what's going on? Yes, I do.
And you certainly haven't stopped exercising.
No, I 5 days a week, I do my workout. I record everything that I do. I do cardiovascular. I've got my own little gym. I've got a bike, a rowing machine and a treadmill. I've got my kettlebells. I've got my TRXs. I've just bought myself one of those multi-Dynaband things that you can clip them on or clip them off. And I work with that. So my belief at the moment is that it's personal fitness, personal health now that I'm interested in, because there's still a lot more left in this body for me that I want to do, but I can only do it if this body is kind of still operating as it should be. So I make a point of exercising. The only time I have off is Saturday and Sunday. The reason I have them off Saturday and Sunday, Saturday's housework day and Sunday's relaxing day.
So Saturday's still a physical day, really?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm pretty debt with the old Hoover. The whole of the house gets hoovered and everything. Yeah. But, no, I think that the amount of time I've done, it's time to move on now and just kind of fade into the background. As one door closes, then hopefully another one will open. It will lead me somewhere else, hopefully into Spain.
Hopefully into Spain. Well, listen, I couldn't be more grateful for you making time to talk to me.
Anytime for you, mate.
Yeah, I don't know how to thank you and make it sound the way I feel it, but I really am very grateful, and hopefully we'll have you on again, and we can explore other things.
Yeah, well, it's been a good one. I hope it's been of interest, and I hope that the people out there find that listening to it. I listen to podcasts, and I find it's quite nice just to sit down, let someone else do the talking, and you haven't got to learn anything. You just listen to what they've got to say, and something there, just you think, oh, Oh, yeah.
Get the
I
odd
remember
nugget,
that.
don't you? It
Yeah.
is. It is nice to listen to things and not have to write them down and remember them because you're going to be,
Absolutely.
tested. It's just it's learning for the pleasure of learning.
You mean I haven't got a test at the end of this?
Oh, you have? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I meant everyone else. That's probably it, mate. That's fantastic.
lovely. Take care, my friend. Bye now.
Goodbye. Weapons activated.